Good evening, members and members of the public. Welcome to Cabinet on Wednesday, 16th November 2022 at 4 p.m. I have apologies from Councillor Graham Turner and Councillor Musrat Khan. Everybody else is here. Minutes of previous meeting. Can I agree they are a correct record? Thank you. If you've got any declaration of interest, please complete the form and hand it in to Andrea after the meeting. And that goes to other members as well who are in person or who are watching, who may take part. Item 4, admission of the public. We've got two members of the public who are also doing a deputation. I'll bring you in at the appropriate time. Item 4, deputation of petitions. Is there any petitions? No, we've got a deputation, and I understand that Lewin and Natalie. Correct. Yes. You are going to do a double act. So ready when you are. And Councillor Mather will then respond to your deputation. Thank you.
Our property is flooding due to a blocked culvert under the highway. We bought the property completely ignorant of the flooding. It was not declared. However, I put an exceptional effort into investigating and eventually finding the cause. I excavated our front garden to a depth of 2.5 metres and found a culvert exiting our property. A culvert that is undoubtedly blocked under the highway. I have done absolutely everything in my power to resolve the issue. However, there is only one obstacle preventing me from saving my family home, and that is Kirklees Council. I have proved beyond doubt that the blockage is under the highway, and the Council is fully aware of that fact. Our home is flooding, a great financial and emotional detriment to our young family. We live under constant threat and stress. Our property is worthless. We have extortionate home insurance. We have to pay inflated electricity bills to run the unreliable pumping system. Pumps that the Council says is adequate solution to the problem. To quote Kirklees legislation from a summary of the Kirklees Local Flood Risk Management Strategy 2012, as a riparian owner, you have a duty to pass the flow of water in a watercourse without obstruction, pollution or diversion, affecting the rights of others. It is important to understand that a duty is something the Council is legally obliged to do. The service that they said they could not fix the problem as we do not know the route and destination of the watercourse. It could well be negligent and detrimental to somebody else's property if they were to fix it. It is through the Council's own investigation that we discovered the exact route of the watercourse and have even had access via a manhole to the watercourse. It is free-flowing and no threat to the fields that it passes through. The LLFA officer, Paul Farndale, claimed that the Council have permissive powers. Under what context does the Council have permissive powers over the safety of a family home and to deny us the right to free passage of water and drainage of water? How can a member of the service claim such power over the law? Power we know he does not have. We have had a wealth of professional and experience and great and expert opinions and have commissioned the service of an expert witness. Everyone, without exception, believes that the Council own the highway and the culvert under their land, and as a consequence have a duty to maintain the flow of water. There is no legislation through which the Council can claim permissive powers over their own asset. I am not here to kneel before the Council, cap in hand, and pleading for charity. I stand before you as an equal. Under the law, we are all beholden to. The Council is an exception to this. You are not above the law, and certainly not at the expense and detriment of members of the public, people you are employed to serve from their own tax money. My question to the Council is why? Why Kirklees continue to cause our family such distress? Why do we have to pursue you to court for our basic rights? To be able to live in a home without threat of flooding, a right I am sure most of you take for granted.
We've been told that unblocking the culvert, which doesn't exist on your maps, would cause problems to fields downstream. This same non-existent culvert can be seen in the giant hole that has been our front garden for 2 years now, where you can also see it is not blocked under our land. We've been told that the water flows uphill towards our house. If it isn't your responsibility to fix culverts, what about the precedent in Scholes in which you blocked a culvert? If the culvert is extinct, why is the blockage of it flooding our house? If the pumps were an adequate solution, why would we have investigated further at great expense? Why do we have to choose between electricity and flooding in a house with 2 young children? I'd like to ask why, after more than a year and several substantial material changes to the situation at our property, hasn't anyone anyone being out to see it. A circumstance where water from private property is flooding a council asset would normally incite prosecution, if I'm not mistaken, especially due to the health and safety breaches on the highway which are now apparent. Why have the numerous third-party complaints about the issue been ignored? We have disproved all your baseless reasons why you now consider this case closed without solving the problem, which are in the report of our expert witness. The inaction of the council on this matter has caused our young family hardship on both the financial and emotional side of things. It has made us question the role of the council and the qualities they report to value. I appeal to your collective conscience as a council to take responsibility and stop wasting more taxpayers' money by going through the courts. We are still awaiting your evidence-based report which might prove any legitimate reasons for your negligence.
Thank you, Natalie and Lewin, for that excellent deputation. I'll ask Councillor Naheed Mather to respond. Naheed.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Clegg, for your additional information. As you know, this has historical roots, and I have all of the information. It has gone all of the way to the Ombudsman and back, and we have investigated. And obviously, we empathise with your situation, but the service has been in contact with you for some time to provide advice. The Council has looked carefully into the issues and have concluded that it is a matter for the property owner to resolve. Water pumps have been installed in the property by a previous owner, and it's their operation and maintenance that is key to resolving the situation. That is the responsibility of the owner and not the Council. In the interest of fairness, we are unable to carry out work on behalf of individual properties and owners which we would not offer to any other Kirklees residents. But thank you for coming today and providing us with any additional information that you have today, and we'll carry on working with you, but it is something that you will have to resolve. It is not the Council responsibility, and our position remains the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mather, and once again, Natalie and Lewin, thanks very much for coming here tonight. You know, you've got an opportunity under questions, so if you want to ask your question, you can do it. I'll allow you. But I know it's not easy, and you know, we'll keep on doing whatever we can. I'll personally just have a chat with officers after the meeting. I'm not promising you anything, but I understand, especially with the two kids you mentioned, and you know, I completely understand what you're saying. But you know, we have to do as public servants operating within the law. We like to help, but at the same time, right? You know, I will have a chat with officers, see what we can do. But once again, thank you very much for attending. You've got I'm on question time now. So, have we got a question?
Yes, sorry, that was just in response to some of the points that Councillor made. The pumps are not an adequate solution, certainly not by law, and there's no legislation in the summary of the Kirklees Local Flood Risk Management Strategy that might suggest so. Throughout our experience, the Kirklees have failed to bring any substantial information forward.
No legitimate evidence, either in law or like physical evidence, as to why you are not taking responsibility. Like what you're doing now is illegal. Like, you know that.
It's under the own government. This is taken directly off the government website. Owning a water course. Let water flow naturally. You must let water flow naturally.
So the question is, what are we doing under our legal obligation? I think that's what you're saying. So I'll ask Naheed to respond to that. From a legal point of view, what are we doing, Naheed?
Mr. Clegg, do you know that we have had extensive investigations? We have kept abreast of all of the developments. We've told you how the situation can be resolved, and the pump wasn't of our doing. The pump was already in your cellar when you actually purchased the property. Now, we're willing to advise you and to look further in any other information that you've provided, but I have all of the information here which is clearly saying we have followed due process, It is not of our making. You have gone to the Ombudsman, and the Ombudsman has ruled in our favour.
They haven't ruled.
So basically, the situation remains the same as previously, and if there is anything we can advise you on, that's all I can offer. Other than that, the council position remains the same. It has been ongoing for some time now.
Could you provide us that information? Because as of yet, we haven't been given any information. The information you have in your hand there.
We've asked.
Can you see what information after the meeting, Naheed? Can you? You'd have to.
No.
Yeah.
I will look into the information you're asking. It's not an information you've been giving us and what the Ombudsman said
No, the
in relation to...
The Ombudsman didn't make a decision.
He didn't rule it, just
Yes.
Can I just,
So
Naheed,
can we
just
talk later?
sit down, please. Yeah. What we will do
Yes.
is you've raised some issues. Whatever information that we have that you think that you haven't had, yeah. What Naheed has very clearly said is that the information has gone to us. We have actually had a complaint that's been lodged with the Ombudsman, and the Ombudsman has actually said that they nothing untoward.
Yeah, it's a court issue.
I've actually got Colin here, who is actually responsible for the service area, so he's putting his hand up. So can I bring him, please?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I am aware of the case, and multiple services have come back and confirmed that they don't believe the flooding is the responsibility of the Highways Authority. We've had the deputation this evening, some new information. You've asked for some of the information as well with Councillor Mather, so I'll undertake that we get a written response out to you that provides you with that information and outlines our position.
Thank you very much, Colin, and I hope that will answer some of the queries you've raised. Is there any more questions from the members of the public? I don't think we have. Right, okay, thank you very much. And once again, thanks again, Natalie and Lewin, for your deputation and the questions. We'll move on to item 7, questions by elected members. Any questions by Councillor John Lawson? John?
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask the Cabinet member responsible whether the Amazon application in Cleckheaton will be a single item agenda?
It's Councillor Graham Turner. He's not here. He's actually going to see the doctors. But what I can do, John, is I can ask him to provide you with a response after the meeting. Is that okay?
Okay, if I could ask the follow-up that I was going to ask, Councillor Turner.
Yes, and we'll try and get that addressed as well.
So if you could get this addressed as well, this would be much appreciated. Could we also commit to holding that committee meeting in Cleckheaton Town Hall so that it's held in the heart of the community that it's going to affect most?
Yeah, I'll pass that information on to Councillor Graham Turner, and I'm sure he will respond back. Yeah. Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Gregg?
Thank you, Chair. My question is about regeneration in Huddersfield, so I appreciate it might be bestowed on yourself to answer this in the absence of Councillor Turner. If you've got the knowledge about this, because it's something I'm trying to find out and I can't seem to get any information on, which is the HD1 regeneration project, which obviously members will be aware was going back to 2008, and it was the project around the stadium, which was, I understand, given quite a lot of support by the council originally. And I'm just wondering, wanted to know, is it still going ahead? Is it still an ambition? Where does the land lie with it? And also where, if it is going ahead or if it isn't going ahead, where does that leave the project in relation to the Huddersfield blueprint? Are they likely to work together, or would one replace the other? And I appreciate any update on that from anyone who has any answers on it. Thank you.
Yeah, HD1 was a project that was primarily led by the stadium, and it was to do with putting extra leisure facilities there, and also to put a new hotel there, and various other things that they had planned. And I do know that, there was a lot of detail work that went on behind the scenes around that, but it's not a council project. Obviously, we were really pleased that it was going ahead. And that was at a time when we were sort of like going through the middle of austerity, so it was really, really important that they came ahead. But what I will do is I'll get some more information, and whatever information I have, which may be additional to what you're asking for, I'll try and get your response. But as far as I'm concerned, that was a project that was run by the stadium. But if there's any more information out there, Councillor Gregg, I will get it over to you. Okay, you got supplementary?
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the update on that. Can I also ask how much the council may have learned in relation to that project or spent in relation to the scheme? And in addition, could the Cabinet member, if possible, give an update on the governance changes, the latest state of play on the governance changes at the stadium? Thank you.
I will get that over to you once I speak to Graham. I don't have the information to hand. Any more questions? I think Councillor John Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. Following the tragic death of Awab Ishaq in Rochdale recently, due to, as the coroner said, the inhaling of mold spores over a long period of time, can I ask what kind of picture we have of the similar kind of problem in Kirklees and whether any of our properties are exposed to that issue?
Did you say mothballs? Sorry?
Like mold.
Mold, I think. Mold. Yeah. Cabinet member, Councillor Cathy Scott, I will pass this on to you.
That's a very good question, John, and I'm glad you brought it here today. I do want to offer our condolences to that family. It's a very tragic circumstance. However, I have asked officers to look at and report back as quickly as possible on how many properties we have that fall below decent home standards. As you know, we're undertaking a major compliance audit and for carrying out duties on homes at the moment and looking at decent home standards. Can I say to all the tenants out there, though, also equally, please report things to us. You're encouraged to come forward if you have got these issues so that I can take it on board myself. So they're welcome to ring me or go direct through the housing. We need to prevent this and ensure that this doesn't happen in Kirklees. Now, I would like to have been able to give you that information today, but unfortunately, I haven't got it to hand, but I will be reporting back. I think it's a report that needs bringing back to us all to be aware of, the standards and are we meeting. But I think you will agree with me that legislation will no doubt change things as well in that area. So, yeah, we're working on compliance. We're driving up the decent home standards. So I will come back to you, John.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Thank you. I mean, that's good to hear that the question is already in play and that we're already on with it. Yes, you're right. The likelihood of legislation is very high and increasing. It was stated during the inquest or during the evidence given that the legislation really does need strengthening. It would be good to know that how we are readying ourselves for that legislation coming at us down the pipe and where and when that could be reported to council.
Yeah, thank you for that, John. Absolutely, totally agree. There's nothing not to agree with that. But I think as we're looking at neighbourhood homes, Kirklees neighbourhood homes, that we also need to take into account the private sector that we have within Kirklees and drive up, in some cases, not all, the standards that are out there, the lettable standards. This goes back to me saying before, we need to drive a standard, a Kirklees standard, that we will not support or settle for less with private landlords in some of the issues that we do have. So, but it is a reflection on ourselves. I will report back to you.
Thank you very much. I've been told Councillor Hall, who's online, doesn't want to ask a question, so we will move on. Any more? You got another question? Councillor Gregg, you got another question?
Thank you, Chair. Just following on from my question to you at the full council on the 12th of October, I just wondered if you'd given any more thought to giving council full consideration here at Cabinet about that Kirklees Highways report that suggested that there was going to be a shortage of 240 spaces at peak times in that new Market Hall car park. It was just to see whether that could be analysed a bit more by full council, full cabinet really, so that that report could be looked at and solutions explored. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a decision that the cabinet will make, and obviously the process that scrutiny gets involved with, so we will take it through the process that we need to take it through. So it's not a decision of the full council to actually allocate how many places and where they go. I don't think I'll be very popular with the rest of the councillors. You got a supplementary?
No, thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Okay, any more questions? Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. A single question, following on from Councillor Paola Davis asked about the Tolson Museum. And I would like to ask the Cabinet member what the timescales are for a decision about the Tolson Museum's future and what kind of discussions are currently ongoing with the Friends of Tolson Museum and the other organisations involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor John Lawson. Councillor Will Simpson, timescales and what engagement's been done. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you, John, for your question, and thank you for Councillor Davis for having asked it at full council as well. I can't give a hard timescale now. I wish I could, but there's so many variables in this, with the fact that obviously Tolson's currently being Huddersfield's museum whilst we have what's ongoing. And we've obviously got we've got all of the things with the cultural heart to happen before we can then transfer that. So it'd be premature for me to put a timescale on it that I know will no doubt change. So I don't want to leave anyone with any false impressions. So I hope you don't consider that avoiding the answer, avoiding the question. But I don't want to give yeah, fair enough. But I don't want to give you an answer that I know I'm not confident with. On discussions that are happening, obviously there's been a lot of internal work, and we my officers in my museums and galleries team often speak to stakeholders and friends of groups regularly. We've also done sort of opened up expressions of interest for any community groups that wanted to come forward with ideas for the future of Tolson. So there have been lots of different avenues of engagement, and we're still open to anyone who wants to engage in a conversation about it at the moment in time. But like I say, at the moment, there's still a lot of water to go under the bridge, and I appreciate the ward councillors who have the Tolson in their ward would appreciate more certainty and clarity. I'm sorry that I can't give that all entirely now, but I want to reassure them that I'm not holding anything back. And as soon as I'm able to have provide that greater clarity, it's something I'll be sharing with them.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. John, you got a supplementary?
I said I wouldn't, and I got a 2-for-1 in anyway, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Any more questions from members? No, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is Kirklees Climate Action Plan. Councillor Will Simpson, can I ask you to provide a briefing on this?
Thank you very much, Leader. And before I launch in, I want to say about the action plan itself, I want to firstly thank my absolutely brilliant climate team, everyone that's in it. When a few years ago, the team was a bit smaller than it is now. We've invested in building capacity because we're doing so much important work on this, but I think the team is actually smaller than people might expect from the amount of incredible work that is coming out of them and has come out of them in recent years. We've had our net zero assessment, we've got this fantastic report, we've got the environment strategy ongoing. So I just want to say a massive thank you to Kat, Sean, Martin, John, Rob, Colin, and I can't name everyone, so apologies if you've not been named, but we have a fantastic team and I'm very grateful to have them have their support, so thank you to them. I'm really pleased to be able to introduce our climate change action plan to the Council. This sets out our ambitions for Kirklees to become net zero and climate ready by 2038 and is a key element of our response to our changing climate. Thus far, we've overachieved against our previous ambition set in the last decade, beating our 40% emissions reduction target with a 53.5% reduction in the Council's own emissions. But to truly tackle the climate emergency, we need to go much further. That's why we declared a climate emergency in 2019 and why the Council has been delivering phase 1 of our climate response in the meantime, which has involved and will continue to involve key measures to reduce the Council's own operational emissions alongside those for Kirklees as a whole. This action plan begins our phase 2 approach to delivering a more comprehensive climate change mitigation and adaptation response, which covers 8 sectors across the district. These link with and address the Council's clean and green agenda, alongside other Council plans and strategies as well. The scope of the action plan is district-wide, which means it covers actions not only for the Council, but also key partners and the wider community. It's also an integrated plan covering both mitigation and adaptation. This means it covers both actions to reduce the district's emissions, along with helping the district to adapt to the consequences of climate change, which we already know are built in. The plan will satisfy the Council's annual reporting commitments to the CDP disclosure scheme and the Global Covenant of Mayors, which are both schemes that we've chosen to participate in order to align with best practice. It will also align with the guidance and criteria set out in the National Climate Emergency Scorecard campaign. I know that you'll all agree that climate change is a huge and complex challenge that we need to address. This action plan is the next step in our action planning journey and sets out a long list of 206 actions for Kirklees to achieve net zero and become a climate-ready district by 2038, in concert with other organisations, individuals and regional and national government. It is also not a firm list of financial commitments from now until 2038 or a list of instructions. This is going to come in follow-up work and as an action of our version 2 of the plan after we've prioritised the actions to those that are going to achieve the maximum benefit as quickly as we can, as cost-effectively as we can. These will be agreed through a place-based prioritisation process involving relevant stakeholders, members and residents, striving to ensure that the actions we commit to reflect our local communities and our places. An important element of the plan is that we prioritise both mitigation and adaptation equally, instead of a bias that's often found towards mitigation and emissions reduction. This takes us ahead of the curve relative to many other local authorities and is going to help the district adapt to current impacts of climate change, which we already see in our communities, as well as reducing the future impact. Linked to this, I'm also pleased to confirm that we are participating in the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission's Local Authority Climate Adaptation Programme to further embed this element of climate action and ensure that we're following best practice. So what comes next? Though it isn't required in the Council's constitution, I'm very happy to be taking forward the plan for discussion at the full Council meeting in December, which will coincide with the formal launch of the plan. Following this, we'll continue to develop and enhance Kirklees' climate emergency response, identifying a set of place-based high-priority commitments for carbon reduction and resilience building. This includes the prioritisation process I described earlier, which will lead into a process of business case development for our high-priority actions. We'll publish a second iteration of this plan once this process is complete, which will form a set of actions as firm commitments to continue to deliver against our ambitious plan and targets. I want to finish with what I feel is the most important part of my foreword at the beginning of the plan. A low-carbon and resilient future is not and cannot be a preserve of the few, but it's the right of everyone in Kirklees. It's our priority as an administration, as a council, to ensure that the actions that we've put forward are realistic, pragmatic and accessible so that everyone, regardless of background, can benefit in a sustainable and fairer future. This is why our path to a low emission and resilient future will allow us to lead the way locally in addressing a global issue. I encourage my Cabinet colleagues to endorse this and I'm delighted to move the recommendations as set out in the report. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Will-Simpson. Councillor Mather, you got a comment?
So I'm very pleased to see the passage of this report at Cabinet. As a previous portfolio holder, I know how hard everyone has batted despite having more resources. I'm also very keen for everybody to know that this isn't just the council responsibility, it's all our responsibility, and in partnership this district will achieve its targets by 2038. So, you know, I also would like Cabinet to accept this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Davis.
I think, as Cabinet knows, this was my portfolio. And I'm not going to crack any jokes about, you know, obviously it was much better before, or any of that. I have to say I am so impressed as to where we've got to. You know, we worked hard laying the foundations, working with Colin and the team. And yes, we were able to achieve things, you know, a few years ago, but we can see now how that solid base is in place with the expertise that we need, with the clarity around the plans and a real momentum. And I think, I really feel that that momentum is gathering pace as we run through. And I think that's always the case with very complex and difficult programs like this. You know, that effort has to go in at the front end to set it up the right way. And now Councillor Simpson and the team are really starting to, if you like, motor onwards with the delivery. I'd agree with Councillor May that that connection with the community. This is not the council being able to solve this issue by itself. So connections with partners, with businesses and the community, you know, are bedded into the approach as well. So absolutely echo the congratulations and thanks that Councillor Simpson said to the team. Lots more to do, lots of work to be done, and obviously, you know, and we'll talk about budgets, etc. later on, but, you know, not in easy circumstances as well. So absolutely, I support this.
Thank you. Any more comments? Don't worry, I'm not going to change the portfolio yet. But firstly, thanks very much, Will, for that report, and just echo what you said regarding the hard work of all our officers that's gone in to put this report together, and all the work that's going behind the scenes. I won't try to mention them because I will probably forget somebody. But the Labour Party obviously has made a massive commitment behind this. GB Energy, the view of our national leadership, Keir Starmer, is that, you know, we will become a super clean energy superpower, publicly owned company. And can you imagine, you know, if once we get into government, you know, the amount of work we will be able to do, right? Yeah, so I think that 2038 target and aspiration is for us. But I think if Labour gets into power, you know, we'll actually far achieve a lot more, and we'll actually bring that 2038 target more forward in terms of achieving it a lot quicker. So once again, thanks very much for all the hard work, and can we just have a show of hands to Councillor John Lawson? You want to say something?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for spotting me there. Yeah, a couple of little questions. We're obviously, as a council, as a country, we're facing some huge financial challenges at the moment. A part of this action plan relies quite heavily on capital investment. If we have to put back some of that, if we have to phase some of it, if we have to, I would hope that we wouldn't have to cancel anything at all, but if we have to put something in on a 10-year plan, etc., can you envisage that, despite the leaders' wish to bring that target forward, that 2038 figure, can you envisage that being pushed back by the current financial difficulties?
Thank you very much, John, for your question. As your question and as Councillor Davis alluded to, we're in really difficult financial circumstances. However, I would say that even before Kwasi Kwarteng's fantastic budget and the economic crisis that we're in occurred, as a council, we weren't going to be able to do this on our own. We need action from government at a national level, and we also need them to provide us with the capital and revenue funding that we need not just to deliver on the climate emergency, but other services as well. But to make sure that we get down the emissions pathway that's outlined in the document, that was never something that we're going to be able to do from council capital and revenue alone. The situation that we're in now makes that situation even more difficult, and of course there are pressures in the council in other areas as well, so it does become incredibly difficult, and we're still reliant on government as a partner if we're going to make that. But it's not impossible, and it's certainly not my intention to move the target to anything less ambitious. We know from the emissions pathway about what is scientifically possible and achievable for us as a council, and the level of our ambition matches that. We want to do everything we can as quickly as we can, and the emissions pathway outlines that. It's not my intention to move the target. We're going to do everything that we can, and I hope that government will step up, because as I'm sure you'll agree with me, John, the cost of not taking action is far greater than the upfront cost of dealing with it, not just for us but for our residents as well.
So apologies, I'm probably jumping the gun here because most people want to the next item.
That's fine. That's fine. I like taking questions, very strangely, so that's absolutely fine. So the net zero roadmap that we set out, I think it might have been February, it was published earlier this year, outlined, which forms some of the evidence basis for this, outlined part of the emissions pathway, and what that showed is that we can get a lot of the way, but not all of the way, by firstly taking cost-efficient measures, so things that have an upfront capital cost but actually end up saving us money in the long term, particularly through revenue, through like the suggestions that you've made. So our commitment through this, the plan that we've got in front of us, is of course to, as I've said, bring forward the business cases first that will make the biggest carbon impact, but also prove to be cost efficient as well and be sensible investments for us to make. So we will certainly, if we're going, to be sensible in terms of the administration of this, but also have the best climate impact, we'll be bringing forward those that are most cost effective and have the biggest impact first. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. John?
So another wee question is about how we count carbon impact, and can we confirm that we are not counting disposed of buildings in that reduction of carbon impact? Can you confirm that for me? Because it seems as though if we do that, we're not really being honest with ourselves about our progress and our measurement of it. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So our target is a district-wide target. It's not just about the council's emissions. So even if we moved ownership of a building, disposed of a building as an organisation, the carbon emissions are still counted because this is a district-wide target, not just the council. The target that I referred to previously, that was set in the previous decade by a different cabinet under a different leadership, was just the council's own emissions. So disposals in that would have counted as a carbon reduction because it's the council's operational emissions that would have reduced. However, even if you exclude the carbon emissions that were removed from our accounting because of that, we still overachieved against that target. So I think there's even, despite that, there's still a really positive story there about the steps that we took during that period. We still overachieved against that target, but going forward, no disposals or anything such as that are going to be accounted for, because this isn't just a target for Kirklees Council, this is a target for all of Kirklees.
Thank you. Yes. Yes.
So that's good to hear. It's good to have that confirmed, because we, above all, we need to be excruciatingly accurate and transparent with our measurements, because anything now that feeds climate change denial, is going to be really, really damaging, because it's all going to cause delay. It's all going to cause grit in the system, and for any ambitions that this council has, it's going to really slow us down. You've probably anticipated some of that. It would be nice to hear at some point what your strategy for dealing with some of that, sometimes orchestrated denial, is, and how you would sort of tackle that.
Yeah, I think dealing with climate denial is a larger task than for one man such as myself. However, John, completely accept the question. We are really keen. I acknowledge, as the portfolio holder, that this is a really big moment for us. And with that means it's also a really big opportunity for us to impact some of the behavioural change that we need to impact, because the council's only accountable for about 4% of the emissions within the borough, with it being a borough-wide target of that leaves 96%. And as a council, we've only got some kind of influence over a third. So there's 2/3 of those emissions that we need to influence. So we need a significant level of behavioural change. And obviously, if there's large levels of climate denial, or even indeed something less sinister as misunderstanding, or people have incredibly difficult and busy lives, particularly at the moment, and tackling the climate emergency isn't necessarily the first thing that they're able to think about. They're thinking about how they can look after the kids, feed the family, get them to school on time. And that's why it's really important, I think, for us to be incredibly proactive and clear in terms of using this as an opportunity to communicate with our residents about the climate emergency, and not just about the steps that we're taking as a council, but the steps that they can take as well. And I hope that will help people on the journey to making behavioural change for tackling the climate emergency, as well as tackling the issue that you've raised in your question a little bit as well.
Thank you. Any more? No. Thanks, Councillor Simpson, for that explanation and the questions as well. I think one of the things that you just mentioned, climate denial, you're probably aware that COP27 is taking place, and our Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister, was in two minds of attending, and I'm glad he did. It's been held in Egypt, and one of the key things that came out to me was that the most vulnerable, and if you look at countries that are most vulnerable, the third world countries, Africa, who actually have the most adverse impact on stuff that's actually impacting on our planet. Big countries where you have people that drive their cars who can't really afford to change from a diesel to an energy efficient or a green car is also an issue, because if this was so easy, I think anybody you ask, they won't deny that the climate crisis. But it's not easy, is it? Because it's all hard work, and it's not just hard work in terms of changing that behaviour, but it's like, how can you convince somebody, if I go to one of my residents who's just trying to make an honest living with a small family, paying a mortgage, and trying to pay their energy costs, how can I convince them to actually change your car and then get a £32,000 green, clean energy car that's super duper? They just can't afford it, And this is why, I go back to what I said, that nationally, right here, we need a strategy that drives all these changes, and that's why the GB Energy company that the Labour Party has actually committed to will give you cheap, clean energy, and there needs to be a national drive to make it easier for residents that we represent to actually embrace that agenda and make it easy for them. But anyway, on that note, can we just have a quick show of hands to get this approved? Thank you very much. And once again, thanks to all the officers who have been working hard. Item 9 is West Yorkshire Mayor's Cost of Living Emergency Fund. Councillor Paul Davis. Paul.
Thank you, Leader. Excuse me. So, in October, the Mayoral Combined Authority set up a cost of living emergency fund. The Kirklees share is estimated to be around £535,000. This report looks at the process by which that funding will be distributed directly by the Council to the voluntary and community sector. We know how essential our community sector is in Kirklees. It's absolutely crucial to our work on cost of living and helping our residents going forward. They're at the front line of supporting residents every day. This funding will help them provide warm spaces and do more work on helping people with food, energy and financial problems. But the report does more than that. You'll see in the detail there, it also lays out the fact that we are looking to not just agree to the method in which we utilise the mayoral fund, but also to allocate from the Household Support Fund extra funding to the tune of £357,000. And again, this, along with the contribution from West Yorkshire, will go to the voluntary and community sector. I think this once more demonstrates the commitment of this administration to do everything it can to support this sector and help them in helping our residents. Also in October, we, as a Cabinet, agreed to target support to residents who need it most. We agreed funding for older people and households that qualify for free meals. But also, as I say, we agreed to distribute funding to local voluntary and community organisations. So that theme is most certainly followed through in this report and is part of the whole approach that the Mayor's taken with this emergency fund. Recommendations, therefore, from the officers are very simple and straightforward. Firstly, that members approve the funding as provided with regards to the West Yorkshire Mayor's Cost of Living Fund, and that continue to work with One Community Foundation Limited and the West Yorkshire Combined Authority to establish the mechanism by how this fund is distributed to the VCSE sector. And secondly, that we approve the sum of £357,200 also to be awarded to the VCSE through One Community Foundation Limited to supplement the Mayor's emergency funding and meet the requirements of the Household Support Fund as set out by the Secretary of State. And then finally, for members to note the Cost of Living Action Plan summary appended to this report. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Any members want to... Councillor John Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed that, or it seemed from the report that this was to be done in 3 tranches, that it was to be delivered in 3 tranches.
Yes.
Whatever Mr Hunt decides to do tomorrow, I'm not thinking it's going to be pleasant, and we may find ourselves in a much worse position after the second tranche or even after the first tranche. Mm-hmm. Is there capacity within this to revisit and to remould and to enhance in the future? Do we have that in view?
You're quite right. We don't know what's coming up tomorrow, and also quite right, and we've seen the volatility around the cost of living pressures. But I think you're very much aware, Councillor Lawson, of where we are in terms of our finances as a council. So the money that we're transferring at this point, absolutely, is a firm commitment. We know that's there. I can't at this point give a commitment on anything further than that, but obviously, we will be still doing everything we can to review and revisit any difficulties that our citizens are experiencing through, underfunding, cost of living increases, etc. But as it stands at this moment, that's the commitment that we're able to give at this point.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Chair. I do have one. It's there somewhere. So we've talked about delivering in tranches. How are we going to measure the success and where that money has gone and how effective it has been? It's something that we do with every programme, of course, and if I've missed it, I'm sorry if it's in the report. I do apologise. But with SANS shifting as they are, and with finances falling away from council and personal finances falling away from individuals, how do we measure our rate of success, our firepower in this situation?
Thanks, Councillor Lawson. Really good question, and absolutely right. I think where we're in any circumstances such as these, where funding is scarce, and the issues are extremely difficult, we've got to make sure that we are getting the most we can out of whatever funding that we make available. I've had conversations in the last few weeks on this, absolutely on this issue with officers. There are some measures in place that we use, or some review processes that we use with the third sector currently in terms of reporting back. From my perspective, I've asked for those to be reviewed so that we can understand more clearly what the outcomes and impact is. So I can't give you a straight answer at the moment in terms of what that looks like, but I've certainly asked that work to be carried out. But that is not to say there aren't reviews. There are reviews in process already. Some of the reviews tend to be perhaps more qualitative than quantitative in terms of looking at, a view coming back from various groups. But your point is absolutely spot on. We do need to understand absolutely what value we're getting from this. Not particularly to put pressure on organisations, the voluntary sector. It's not for that. I'm sure you're not asking it in that sense. But it's to look at what we can do to organise better and to focus better in terms of deliverables. Hopefully, we'll have a clearer view on that in coming weeks. And that may be something that we can pick up a cabinet or even separately, if you like.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Lickford, you had your hand up.
It's not a question, Leader. It's just to declare that I am a trustee of one community, and though I do applaud this paper, I think it's best if I don't vote on it.
Yes, I completely understand that. Anybody? Councillor Cathy Scott?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the officers that pulled this together, and also Paul. It's a thankless task at the moment, and it's shifting sands, as I keep saying. Daily we're getting up to different things. I welcome this because it is about supporting communities and our most vulnerable. And I know it's going to be a tighter corner we're going to be put in once we hear what happens on the 17th. So once again, Paul, thanks for the work that you are doing on this. And again, West Yorkshire Combined Authority, the contribution that we're getting there. So, and I just wish it was different times. And normally when you get these funding envelopes, you've got your plan and things are going well. But at this moment in time, there's more and more people falling over the cliff edge on what's happening. And that's what's worrying me. So thanks to this administration as well. And I don't normally go on this tact, but I think we've been very focused on where we are committed to. So I just think that Cabinet and officers are doing a great job.
Thank you, Councillor Cathy Scott. Any more? No? Firstly, thanks very much for Councillor Paul Davies for bringing this paper, and thank you for the Mail Combined Authority, Tracy Brabin, for putting this £3 million across the region, and also the £357,000 that's been allocated additional to this cost of living fund. But this isn't going to be enough, is it? We all know that. You know, the cost of living crisis is going to be shouldered by millions due to the fact that the economy has been crashed by the current government. And, I just hope that tomorrow the settlement and the financial settlement in December safeguards local government. But we all know already that Kent and Hampshire county councils, both Conservative-led councils, are already saying that if there's no intervention from government, they're going to go under because their current pressures are actually forecast that the gap's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Previous to that, there was an article in one of the accountancy magazines, PFA, that 60 councils are on the brink of going bankrupt. This is on the backdrop of 10 years of austerity from 2010 until 2022. And councils are half the size as they are. So we don't have the same leg room or the same flexibility to actually take any more out. I'm hoping that, you know, tomorrow's settlement actually recognises that public services are the front line defence for communities, and local democracy is really, really important, you know, because we are the ones who actually develop the businesses, develop the housing, develop the infrastructure, and to take any more out will actually, you know, cripple local government and cripple local communities. But we're going to be talking about the Q2 report later on. But on that note, can I just have a show of hands that we're going to approve this? Thank you very much, members. Item 10 is Kirklees procurement strategy. Councillor Paul Davies, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. So the procurement strategy has been developed to support Kirklees Council's strategic aims and priorities. It doesn't sit to one side, it's fundamental within that. The strategy recognises the opportunity that procurement activity has in maximising added value and efficiencies with a focus on achieving value for money, alongside collaborating with internal and external partners. The procurement vision is to offer an outstanding procurement experience for stakeholders and suppliers that is transparent, provides opportunities for local businesses, also delivers fantastic goods and services, delivers best value for residents, and supports achievement of Kirklees' shared outcomes. So you'll see in the report that the strategy is, or see in the strategy itself, it's framed around 5 key themes. So firstly, it's around delivering social value, which is around securing the best economic, social and environmental benefits for our people and places. And as we've talked previously at both here and scrutiny, this is an area where we've put a huge amount of work in terms of trying to ensure that we really are squeezing out as much as we can that extra element of social value for our citizens going forward. Secondly, it's about promoting inclusive procurement, where we promote a vibrant and mixed local economy, recognising the importance, innovation and value offered by our SMEs and VCSEs. Thirdly, it's around continuing to develop a category-led approach, sourcing more strategically, again more innovatively, stimulating and encouraging competition. And then finally, the fourth point, I can't add up. The fourth point is I know, I could see you were worried then. I wasn't scrolling down quick enough, clearly. Fourth point is around striving for innovation and improvement in all we do, but very much about delivering an effective commercial function that's working proactively and flexibly going forward. And then finally, it is all around good governance. And that means using proportionate controls, having a perspective in that area to make sure that controls are not actually stopping things happening just for the sake of it. But it is about systems and standards and management of procurement risk. So, in terms of the key element that we will never forget with it when it comes to procurement, that we absolutely focus on, that's one of demonstrating value for money and partnership working. This is absolutely at the heart of our approach when it comes to our procurement services. In terms of next steps, on the basis that hopefully that we, as a Cabinet, agree to sign off the strategy, firstly, we will be identifying leads for key procurement themes during November and December. We'll also be identifying key milestones for progressing delivery of the strategy. Again, that will commence in December and that will run through to January. And then identifying corporate resource for progressing performance measures December and January. So quite short timetables for those, but very much a commitment to make sure this isn't just a paper strategy, that we put it into action, and that we've got ways of not just progressing performance, but measuring the performance. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Anybody want to make Councillor Will Simpson?
Yeah, I just want to say well done and thank you to Paul and the team for this. Since I've joined the council, I know we've made real progress on our procurement work. It's something that an exciting conversation really started about in my early days as a councillor. And I know that since then our procurement team, I can't remember when it was, it might have been a couple of years ago, our procurement team have definitely won an award whilst I've been on council. I'm sure you could, Paul. But I think it says a lot about them. They've not then, rested on the laurels and decided, oh, we're top of the country, we'll stop there. I think we're regularly getting updates to strategies and how they can further improve. So I just all credit to them for the work that they've done, the progress that they've made, and thank you very much to the team for all of that.
Yeah. Any more comments, question, Councillor John Lawson?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm a fan of this one particular piece in this, and that's the social value. I think it's something that's been long overdue a refresh. It's been there for a while, but I think sometimes there are decisions that have to be made, and sometimes that goes to the back of the queue. I'm glad that that's been brought back to the front of the queue as a priority now. I'd ask, have you actually started implementing this already in practice? Is there still a kind of actually we're not going to policy this particular policy, but are we implementing it already?
The answer to that, short answer, is yes. In the same way and the same approach we take to all of our policies and strategies, we absolutely look to incrementally start working to that style and that approach. Has the whole strategy been implemented in terms of every detail? No, of course not. But yes, already Jane Lockwood is driving this different approach, and I think yourself through scrutiny. The work is a good example, actually. The social value work, those discussions are already taking place with partners, with major suppliers, and work. It's not waited for this to happen. So the answer is yes. Clearly, there's more work to be done, and clearly it takes longer to implement a full approach such as this.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair. So part of that strategy, part of that element of the strategy, is that when we can't agree a particular item or action of social value, such as local apprenticeships in construction or something like that, when we're procuring, then we seek a cash equivalent. I'm not clear at the moment what that then becomes, what that's spent on, which fund it goes into. It's of a windfall nature anyway, so we're not talking about regular revenue here. This is talking about windfall cash and where that goes. Could you explain that for me, please?
Yeah, sure. What we're working on at the moment, and this hasn't been finalised yet, but certainly an idea which we're looking to develop is to bring together those monies, and in particular, significant monies that we would get from major contracts, and form a fund, and that fund would then become a community fund that we would look to use to deliver support within communities across Kirklees. So the idea being very straightforwardly, instead of small sums or relatively small sums, which have fairly insignificant impact, what could we do if we bring that together into one fund? To be fair, that's still being worked on at this point. It's something that I know David Shepherd used in a previous local authority, and he said worked very effectively. I'm certainly very keen to follow that approach. I don't think we're a million miles away from it. One of the key issues, establishing a fund is easy. how you governance the governance, how you work with that, how do you decide where to allocate that money and so forth. But again, it would be certainly one of the key areas would be working with the voluntary sector, I have no doubt. But it may also be that that fund is able to actually help us to help disenfranchised areas within Kirklees in terms of provision. Could be training provision. It could be helping them with, just simply initiatives to get them back into work, etc. We are working through that at the moment, and certainly I think again, just invite yourself, John, if you've some thoughts about how such a fund could be used, I'd be more than welcome. I'd be more than welcome to have that. And please give me a call afterwards if you want to have a chat.
Thank you, Paul. Any more questions? Councillor John Lawson.
Just a slight question, but more of a comment, really. I do apologise. So about that fund, yeah, I'm a fan. That as and when monies are accrued into that fund, then we can actually sort of build up that fund for a specific task. You're right, the governance is an issue. How do we keep it clear? How do we keep it accountable and open? And I would ask for assurance that money accrued through social value would be ring-fenced for social value, and that there would be no raids on that fund, that they wouldn't actually, just be, well, actually, we've got no programme for that, so we're going to use it for something else instead. I would actually request that is taken forward in the spirit it was in the spirit it was accrued.
I absolutely agree, and certainly, I would be extremely determined and adamant that would be the case, because we don't get many opportunities, and that is absolutely what it's there for. And I think from my perspective, and I believe absolutely from the administration's perspective, that reflects our values as well. So yeah, but it's a very good point. We will have to make sure that there are things written in there to confirm that as well. But no, I don't believe that would be an issue. In fact, I will make sure it's not an issue.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Viv Kendrick.
Thank you, Leader. I have to say procurement isn't my subject of choice, and reports on procurement aren't my choice of bedtime reading either. But I have to say I compliment the folks who put this together, and Councillor Davis, in that it is so clear. And for me, I really like the ambitions are clearly stated, but how it's going to be delivered, I think, is essential. And even more heartening is how it will be measured. And, I look forward in the future to seeing further reports as to how this has developed. And really the feedback from stakeholders and partners, I think, will be invaluable. But, I can only compliment people on providing me with such easy-to-read documents on such a dry subject. Thank you.
Bedtime reading.
Of course, they have to do that because I can't understand anything otherwise. So that's the reason.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. No, that's really good report. And once again, thanks for the officers and to basically put down the ambitions and what the outcomes are. And the key element is the social value, because obviously, like Paul said, that we are spending millions locally, and if we can actually get that pound to circulate within our local economy by actually being creative with our procurement strategy, then that pound stays within Kirklees. And Will mentioned, awards. Well, 2019, we were the winner of the procurement team of the year, and then again we were highly commended in another award. Innovation Procurement for the year. 2020, we were winner of the Project of the Year for Procurement. 2021, Best Procurement Delivery in Local Government. 2022, which earlier this year, we were finalists in the Individual Achievements and Social Value Award. So we are doing the right things, because these awards aren't given to anybody. You have to actually meet certain criteria and actually be amongst the best to be the best, and we're there. So once again, thank you for all the hard work of our officers, and thanks, Paul, for that excellent report. Show of hands to get the report approved. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to item 11, which usually is a standard report. Either standard report, but I'm sure Paul will go into a lot of detail. They are not just choppy waters, but they are like, massive storms ahead. And the big storm that is forecasted tomorrow, storm mini budget is not a mini budget. It's probably going to be the most important budget this government will ever or any government in modern history will actually approve. But I'll pass on to Paul to provide an update. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks again, Leader. I'll try my best to keep this brief in terms of giving an overview. I think as members, you've been hit with a lot of these numbers and the detail before, but and clearly, if there are any details you want to pick up or discuss, I think we can do that. I think in terms of overview, we're all very much aware, obviously, that households are being hit in the cost of living crisis, but also, as councillors, we're very, very much aware of the major impact on public services too. And as government prepare for the budget tomorrow, this report is a really timely reminder of the issues they need to tackle in local government too. We've been open and transparent with residents about the challenge we face. We've talked about the 11 million in inflationary costs, all of these extra challenges piling onto the council rapidly and in a way that no one forecast at the start of the year. And you'll remember the previous reports and briefings that I've given, and certainly briefings that have gone through scrutiny, and the way in which those have changed. And again, that word I keep using, volatility. I would like to think at this point that some of that volatility has calmed down, but that would be foolish of me to say that is the case completely. But we do certainly, within this report, have a very clear picture, I think, as clear picture as we can at this point, of the challenges that we face. So we've taken immediate action. It's necessary action in order to face the challenges not only we face this year, but also to set in place the foundation for the even more difficult challenges we face the next fiscal year. So there's the recruitment freeze that we've communicated, reducing the use of buildings. The buildings that we're focusing on are tending to be the back office buildings. We're hoping as much as possible to protect frontline services. And of course, we've already talked in previous discussions about the libraries and what we've done to secure those libraries going forward in order to help our communities through warm space support and other support that they can access through them. And all spending, all new spending in particular, is having very detailed oversight, all expenses being reviewed and approaches within directorates being looked at to look at ways in which we can deliver services in a more effective manner. But none of us are under an illusion that is easy. A huge amount of that work's already been done since 2010 during austerity. And the famous cliches of low-hanging fruit, etc., don't exist anymore in that regard. But what's essential, and it's a message we have to keep repeating, is that government needs to support the sector. We know that in Kirklees, we've not been treated fairly. It's not complaining, it's not whining. It's a reality. Kirklees has been underfunded comparatively to other similar-sized metropolitan councils for a long time. So, as a council, all we are asking for is to be treated in a fair manner. We're not looking for special treatment. And there are a number of local authorities in our position. And without that support, and hopefully tomorrow we'll get that support, the future, as I've said previously, looks grim. And it looks grim for all local authorities. And as the leader pointed out earlier, we're already seeing some authorities coming forward and certainly Hampshire and Kent are the ones that have hit the news, but there's clearly a lot more that are close to that point. The 34 million budget gap will most likely grow and will have an impact on services. We know that. But, you know, again, this council has been prudent over the years, and that has put us in a position where, certainly for this fiscal year, our reserves are sufficient to ensure that, you know, we will balance the budget, albeit that we'll be drawing down on more reserves than we wanted to and that we forecast. And again, we've talked about going forward, and there will be, you know, more discussion on the MTFS at another date about the growing difficulties, particularly in the next fiscal year. So we need the autumn statement to send a message that public services are vital, not just to Kirklees, but also vital across the UK in terms of helping to regenerate our economy, to create a fairer economy where people share in the fruits of that economy. And clearly, that is something that has to come through from government. We will play our part if government play their part in providing that fair funding. One of the things that certainly I've referred to many times, and I think is crucial, is around this whole idea of sustainability and resilience. And it's something that we try and achieve in everything we do in reality, how we operate with our voluntary sector, how we operate in communities. We absolutely try and ensure that we're not creating dependence, that what we're doing is helping communities to have stronger economic bases and better, higher quality jobs going forward, better training, and a feeling of confidence. That is extremely difficult at the moment. But again, once again, we'll keep reaffirming our commitment to investment within Kirklees, and in terms of the capital plan, albeit that we have rephased and looked at how we deliver in that remains a solid commitment going forward. So in terms of the overall paper, it's a very straightforward recommendations. It's all around the management actions and the ability to put those actions in place quickly, to be agile and able to respond to changing circumstances. And as we know, that continues to be the sort of context around this. So if we look at Section 7, most of those, Section 7 is simply to note, but I would just point out two key areas. 7.4, where we're asking Cabinet to delegate approval for the proposed temporary operational measures, which you'll see in paragraphs 3.7.9 to 3.7.10, to the relevant strategic director in conjunction with the relevant portfolio holder, having taken account of relevant powers, duties and obligations to consult and engage. And then 7.5 is to note and agree that if a decision is made in relation to fees and charges which amends a previous Cabinet decision as set out in paragraph 3.7.12 of this report, that such a decision will have the effect of changing any previous decision. Thank you, Leader. I would ask Cabinet if they would approve the recommendations, in particular 7.4 and 7.5.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor David Hall, who's joined us online. So, David, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Sorry that I'm not able to be there in person this afternoon. Can I first thank Councillor Davies for his very clear explanation of the problems that we're facing in year as a council, and these are worrying figures. And it's important to note that there can't be many people in this country that aren't going through a process at the moment of examining their income and their expenditure in great detail. And even beyond those borders, when we realise that also we've got Eurozone inflation at 10% and American inflation at 8%, there's indeed this kind of dilemma is going on across a lot of the world. I think the Cabinet has the right recommendations here. I would support particularly paragraph 7.4 and 7.5, as Councillor Davis has pointed out. I think it's important to know that, first of all, we need to give some assurance to the public, to our residents, that some of the immediate measures that they're going to have to be taken are proportionate but also necessary. And I think in order to do that, I would hope that the Cabinet would agree to some all-party involvement in the overseeing of some of these decisions that are going to be made by the appropriate director. I would hope you would agree to that, and to say that I'm certainly willing to be involved in that process if that is a decision that's made. So just to say again, these are going to be unpalatable decisions for the Cabinet and for the Council as a whole, for us all to make. But I think what you've put down is right. I think these are necessary, and we will lend some support to try and get this done in the most painless way that we can. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor John Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. It's in particular 3.7.9 that I want to talk about. I have some concerns about the delegation to officers without any kind of detail given in this report. I think that one of the things that concerns me is that maybe there might not be the ward level consultation with ward members to understand some of the implications of the actions that we might be taking, particularly in terms of things like rationalising use of buildings. I'm not quite sure, I know you mentioned back office, but I think groups ought to have some kind of clarity and some kind of clear understanding of what might happen to any venues that they might be using and when that might happen. When we look at groups, for example, like Cleckheaton's U3A, there are around about 600 members of that. I'll use a phrase that I used when Council closed the Wycliffe Mount Sports Hall, and they are a social engine or dynamo. They're greater than the sum of their parts. It's not just about finding somewhere else. It's about being cohesive and finding that place together so that all of those interactions, those social interactions and all of that community benefit stays within that organisation. So perhaps just a small exposition of what we mean by, a little bit more detail about what we mean by buildings rationalisation might be welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Paul, do you want to respond, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, before I respond, because I didn't get a chance to say anything in terms of Council Hall, I very much appreciate the comments and support from Council Hall as well. I think in terms of, discussions around how we communicate and work with all members, across party, I think that is certainly something which we'll take on board and look at that and think about the most effective way of doing that. I think that for me, one of the key issues is that what we need to, this does link through to yourself, Councillor Lawson, as well, before I get to the specifics. It certainly is the case we've got to make sure that we have as easy, not easy route, that's the wrong route, as effective as a route as we can have to decision making in terms of the circumstances we face ourselves. We all know that within the public sector, particularly local authorities, procedures which quite rightly are there to protect the public purse sometimes are very difficult in very volatile and fluid circumstances. So I'm glad to hear from Councillor Hall, the support for 7.5 and 7.4. In terms of what that looks like, at this stage, again, we've not set out a paper, if you like, around that, because essentially the way that will operate is most certainly through a combination of work that happens at an executive level, ET level, looking at the various pressures and issues and plans, very closely in consultation with myself as the portfolio holder, and clearly with a very, very close link in terms of our head of finance to look at those implications of what we're doing. There is we all know, again, there is a view in there with regards to making sure that we're operating in a proper fashion. But from my perspective, certainly I don't believe there's anything, unless there's something which is of commercial issues, that we would particularly not be transparent about. What I can say is, in terms of timing, it may well be that some of the timing in terms of those discussions would be very tight to involve people because of the need to react very quickly. The very nature of what we said in terms of delegation is that we can't be that prescriptive at this stage. I think in terms of buildings, again, there will be discussions with ward councillors. I've no doubt that during the coming period, in this fiscal year and certainly next fiscal year, there are going to be some really difficult, and I think people have used the word unpalatable decisions. I'm really, clearly, we continue to hope that that there are differences in funding that enable us to sort of push against that. But it may well be the case that we will have to, and I'm sure it probably will be the case, that we will have to look at how we put in place or work with community groups to make sure that we don't lose, as you just said, the values that they bring to communities, but we may have to look at different ways and different methods and mechanisms of doing that. Again, I can't be specific because the reality is that the executive team is still working through the actual specifics of buildings at this point, and that final list hasn't been confirmed at this stage. I believe that it won't be that far away, but that is still being worked on. So it sounds like a good old politician's answer, and I'm sorry, John, at this point, but I do think we've got to find ways of maintaining those hugely valuable community activities, that social interaction, that strength we get from those particular groups, etc. Even if it means we've got to find another way of doing it. But it's until we've made those final decisions on the buildings, I can't confirm any more than that.
Yes, thanks. I hadn't turned my mic off, so I'm ready to go. Thank you. Thanks for that answer. So I guess there's something to say about timing here. You did say that there would be tight turnaround times. So are we talking about next couple of weeks? And if there's a measure sort of said, right, okay, we're gonna do X, and this is going to mean Y for the public, do the public necessarily get that opportunity to say Z about that? Thank you very much. I would say as well that some of these have been trailed as temporary measures, and I wonder how we pick our way through the next 6 months or till March or whenever that is, whenever we feel is appropriate to take the brakes off, how we go about reintroducing some of these measures and making sure that we haven't permanently downgraded our council by default.
Yeah, a fundamental answer, I'm sure you would know this anyway, is to have that certainty from government in terms of our funding over the next not 12 months, but 2-3 years. And that is the fundamental issue we have. And really, the challenge at the moment, not for me, just for me as a portfolio holder, but certainly for the officers, is being able to put together any programme or any future picture without that background. Now, we may know more tomorrow, and that may help us, John, bring that picture together more quickly, but it has been excruciating. I'm frustrating, and I must admit I've never experienced anything like this in my previous career. There was, it might not have been good certainty, but many times at least we had certainty about where a particular organisation was going, because of it was private sector, the way that operated as such. So it is extremely difficult. I can't give a commitment and I can't give timescales at the moment because I simply that would be wrong of me. I'm certainly having very regular meetings, as you can imagine, over this issue. We will be having further reviews very quickly now after tomorrow, and certainly picking up on that. And absolutely will be putting out some communications as a result of tomorrow. But again, that will be fair. It's not going to be detailed. It'll take some time for us to go through that. I would like to think we'll be in a position following tomorrow where in the next few weeks we've got a much clearer perspective in terms of that flight path, where we're going, what it looks like. Unfortunately, I haven't got a huge degree of confidence from what we've seen previously in how things have operated before. I'm really sorry I can't give more than that, but one thing I can assure you, I think as you've seen already through our approach is we have done everything we can to be as transparent, not just to members but to residents as well, and that's my commitment. We'll continue to do that as quickly as we can. And again, I know I keep saying the same thing. Please, by all means, if you want to contact me at some point because you think that there's been too long or there's too much of a silence and it's been far too long, please contact me and then we can talk and we can see. Because sometimes when you're in that, again, another cliche, the eye of the storm, you sometimes forget that outside of that people don't really know what's going on. So that would be of value as well.
Thank you very much, Leader. As people would likely expect, we've obviously had a number of important meetings and discussions about this report, and I'm going to say now what I said in those meetings, which is it is thoroughly depressing, and I find it incredibly worrying, the situation we're in, and I think that means, as sort of others have alluded to, that we need to be upfront with our residents about the fact that there are going to be really, really difficult decisions, and those decisions a lot of them aren't going to reflect our ambitions, and they aren't going to reflect what we came into politics for. I think throughout the last period of austerity, government was very effective in how they presented it, in ensuring that many councils got the blame for services which were lost, which councils had no real power to save because of the situation they were putting through funding. And I think it's important for our residents to know that in this, they've still got a council that's on their side, and they've still got a council that's going to be fighting for them. But that is still a really difficult situation because we're going to be making some, as Paul said, unpalatable decisions that can't be avoided. We've got a legal duty as a council to have a balanced budget. Government doesn't allow us to do anything but that. So we'll see what Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak have in store for us tomorrow. I'm not confident of what's going to come tomorrow. I remain incredibly concerned about it, but I think it's important for our residents to know that we still remain ambitious for them as a council. As a council, we're still on the side of our residents and we understand what they're going through, but this period is going to be incredibly difficult and we're nothing but upfront about that.
Thank you. John, and then I'll bring you in.
So thanks for that. I mean, we have got an unprecedented set of circumstances in front of us. That's agreed. I'm not going to say otherwise. We have a central government, a Conservative central government, that has systematically nobbled us, if you like, as a public sector organisation, and us more than others, in Kirklees more than others, unfairly so. I would ask, though, that as an administration, you are in full administration, I would ask that the implications of whatever actions are taken are thoroughly thought out before they are taken, before they're going into. I can see nods. I know you're going to do that. I know in your heart of hearts that's what you want to do, and you're going to spend time doing it. I have a lot of respect for our SLT, for our directors. We have a lot of talent there, and I would hope that the impacts on the public would be put to the back, and that we would leave those to the last. Historically, sometimes we haven't done that as a council. I look back to some of the previous cuts caused by central government, and we have made mistakes, and we have paid dearly further down the line. And some of those have been in children's services, and we tread lightly there. You know, we have to tread lightly there. We have to be very sensitive about the ongoing nature of whatever we do in children's services, because that stays with us for generations. So I've asked you something that you're already going to agree with. So on that note, I don't really require any answer, but if you wish to comment, thank you.
Thanks, John. And certainly, I think that was a good analysis, of the issues we face. Right through this, we continue, and certainly I continue as a portfolio holder with the team, to look at what we can do to focus our support in the areas where we know people are being hit the most. That in itself is a huge challenge. What is even more difficult is knowing that there are many people who sit, if you like, outside of those most vulnerable groups who are also suffering, and the frustration at knowing that we can't do what we know we could do and what we'd like to do. When we reflect on the teams that work, and as you say, we've got some very talented people within our teams. Also, the other thing is the huge emotional and mental strain on our teams. I've not, certainly in my career, ever come across anybody, people more committed in terms of their focus on supporting, other people and providing, that help going forward. But yeah, you're absolutely, correct in terms of your overview. We will continue to drive the values of the administration, to look to support our citizens, to do everything we can to support frontline services, and certainly children's services, adult social care, and that support to vulnerable and most vulnerable, have obviously, at there in terms of priorities. Let's wait and see what happens tomorrow. Let's see what we've got to work with, and then we'll go from that. And I'm sure, we'll have more discussions. We'll absolutely have more discussions about that. And one thing I would say, and I know it sounds strange in terms of the conversation we're having, but I really want to make sure that our citizens, have a message of hope as well. That we're not simply going to sit here and manage decline. We've learned from the past. We've learned from some of the things that we've done with the best of intentions, but none of us came in here to manage decline and to manage any policies from central government which are designed not to help our people. So, we'll try and achieve that balance. We're being sensible, and it's difficult doing that with a balanced budget approach. But I think you understand the values and approach we're taking on this. Thanks.
Thank you. Just a few closing remarks. I think Will's quite right. The bottom line is balancing the books. And balancing the books starts at central government level. And again, what happened a few weeks ago was the books weren't balanced. That's why the market crashed. And that's why the economy crashed. And that's why the pound lost a lot of value. And the Bank of England had to come in. So the market failed, not because of the market forces. The market failed because of the way government intervened. This time round, the market won't crash. And this time round is how that balanced budget will be presented. And I think we've said it. What we can't do in this council is to use austerity as a measure of curtailing ambition and putting services at risk and putting lives at risk, because that's what we're talking about here. So austerity was a political choice, and I hope if I was in government, if our leader was in government, what I would say to him is, yes, I understand you've got to raise taxes. So raise taxes to the most who can afford it. You probably know that during the pandemic, the 10 richest men doubled their wealth. So they're the starter. You know, the 10 richest men that doubled their wealth, they could probably pay for the cost of living crisis without having any impact on public services. You know, we have to go to the population, because the population, the masses, the working people, yeah, be it 400, 500, £1,000, whatever it is, it's going to cripple them. But if you go to the 10 richest men in the world, say, look, you may double the profits, then we only ask you for 10% of the profits. Put them into the public coffers. Problem sorted. Energy utility companies, again, put a levy. Most of your problems are addressed. The big multinationals, and Keir Starmer said a few days ago that if you tax Amazon and put a levy on them, you know, that will actually raise a lot of public finances. Because the bottom line is we're not taking money away from the richest in our society to actually line our pockets. We're putting that money in to provide public services to the most vulnerable, to the sort of things that you were talking about, John. And that's why I'm hoping that that's what this government will do. You know, they have said that they're going to tax, but they need to tax the right people. You know, they can't make taxes on universal credit. They can't put taxes on the least vulnerable. They can't start to take out money from children's services. They can't start taking money out of public services. You know, there are some departments across the piece, not local government, in Whitehall, that might need efficiency savings, but who are protected. You know, so look at them. So there are real choices that will need to be made. And I'm convinced that whatever comes forward, they will be politically driven, politically motivated, and that's where you'll see that, you know, having a Labour administration nationally right here will actually completely rebalance that. But anyway, I wait to be corrected tomorrow. But thanks anyway. Can we have a show of hands to approve that report? Thank you, members. And on that note, we've come to the end, and it is good night because it's at night outside. So I hope to see you soon. Thank you very much.